Hello, Internet. Welcome to Only Kind of Everything. And WWE and TNA have a partnership, and that's not even the biggest thing we're going to be talking about today. Now, we are going to lead with that because I think it is a really big deal. If anybody is familiar with the way WWE has operated over forever, effectively, they're not traditionally a company that plays nice. If you look at Evolve and the British indie scene, even when they worked with ECW back in the 90s, these partnerships in the long haul don't normally end well for the company that's smaller than WWE. Now, I do hope that that is not the case with this particular crossover that they're doing. TNA has done a lot to survive over its existence, from kind of being this plucky upstart to claiming to be the number two and trying to go head to head with Monday Night Raw, to just kind of being the company that wouldn't die and yet somehow manages to come back at least as good as it was. Arguably can't always say it's come back better, but it always manages to rebound and get back to some form of, its better days. Now, here is some things to think about. I do hope that this is good long term for TNA. It sounds like it's going to be really good for the talent to start with. Definitely your Jordan Grace, your Joe Hendry. This will probably be able to give the Hardy Boys one last match in WWE. I doubt that Nick Nemeth and Ryan Nemeth will make any moves in WWE. Maybe, but it just doesn't seem like something either of them are trying to go for right now. But the reason I'm kind of talking about them, all of them, like this, is the idea that, this is great for everybody, and it is to an extent, but here's what I think people need to keep in mind. WWE is definitely the market leader when it comes to professional wrestling. That's not a knock on AEW. That's not a knock on New Japan. That's just kind of fact. WWE, there are people when they think professional wrestling, WWE is what they think of. So they are, quote unquote, the big dog. They are, and especially right now with Perception, they're the company that you want to be at. They're the company that's really, really hot right now. So WWE has NXT. They have the deal with TNA. The reason this could pose a problem as time goes on is you have people who in AEW, your Malachi Blacks, your Ricky Starks, your Ray Phoenixes, potentially Miro, potentially MJF, maybe even some guys higher up who are now looking at WWE and going, well, they're definitely doing better now. And I see the Ethan Pages, the Jade Cargills, the Lexus Kings, obviously Cody Rhodes, the Penta, who have debuted in WWE, and they're getting better treatment than they would have under a previous regime. So now you have all these you have this AEW talent who are like, well, maybe WWE, let's go over there, make some money there. I don't blame them, but WWE is what I would say in danger of is the same problem right now that AEW is facing, and that is a bloated roster. If you think back a few years, and some of you may not have been watching WWE at the time, but if you think back to when you had MVP coming up, you had Ken Kennedy coming up, Shelton Benjamin would have been in that conversation. Carlito at that time would have been in the conversation. To an extent, Lord Tensai, before he had basically been turned into a joke, was coming up at that time. You had all these really hot mid-card names that you were like, man, this guy, so-and-so is primed for a spot at the top. That never came. That fell to the fact that Randy Orton, Edge, John Cena, especially John Cena, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Eddie Guerrero for a time, Brock Lesnar, Rey Mysterio, like those top spots were really taken. And I don't think we're, sorry about that, I don't think we're at a level of that critical mass, quote unquote. I don't think we're there quite yet. But the top of WWE's card is quickly becoming a crowded scene, which isn't necessarily bad if you're in the top of the card. But when you have these younger guys, younger, quote unquote, trying to break into that main event, and, when I say younger like that, I'm talking like an LA Knight, who is in his 40s. You have guys like Sami Zayn, who have never been to the top, and a lot of people like, this is his time to be at the top. Jey Uso, a lot of people like, it's his time to be at the top. And now you have this influx of talent that could be coming from TNA, and especially from NXT with your Ethan Page, your Trick Williams. Some of these guys are going to have time to cook at the bottom, but as you go up that card, man, those spots are going to become crowded again, and it's going to be another logjam, kind of like we had with MVP, Shelton Benjamin, and those aforementioned names, where there's just no getting to the top. And I wonder if Triple H is going to be able to navigate these, and this is on the women's side too, because Tiffany Stratton is doing great to prove that you can break through, but there is a huge crop of extremely talented women in NXT getting ready to come through and tear it apart, and that's not even counting Jordynne Grace, who will be over, and for no better terminology, had to slow down because she was making the women around her look bad. You got Charlotte Flair coming back. So I'm not saying that this is a problem exclusive to the men, but I do think the men's side is definitely going to be a more prominent issue than the women's side, at least for the time being, because I don't see as many of the women in NXT moving up as quickly. But the other thing to think about, again, with this TNA partnership, now you have your Mike Bailey's, your Josh Alexander's, your Joe Hendry's, Moose, potentially, who could come over, and they'll probably stick more in NXT, but if they're good enough, when their time comes, they're going to get cherry picked up, and they're going to head to the main roster. And you're going to have more of these guys who are just like, man, Joe Hendry or Josh Alexander's really good. He deserves to be at the top. And those spots just aren't going to be there. And if you then start adding into the mix guys like Malachi Black or Aleister Black, whatever he's going to go by if he comes to WWE, the Miros, the Ray Phoenixes, the Pentas, these guys, where do they fit? Everybody wants to be at the top. And, you kind of have to look at that landscape and go, man, it's a good problem to have if you know how to navigate it. But, Triple H has put some really good years together, but at the end of the day, he was still taught a lot of what he knows about booking from Vince McMahon. And Vince has proven that he got comfortable having only so many top stars, and this will be a kind of maybe one of the biggest tests that Paul Levesque, Triple H, has in not creating this massive logjam of really talented people who just don't get the opportunity to get over, get that title, get that main spot that they're all chasing, which would inevitably lead to maybe a pendulum shift in the favor of talent wanting to go to AEW, wanting to go to New Japan, So that's just something that I think a lot of people need to keep in mind with this WWE TNA deal, is that yes, it's probably going to be really cool in the short term. We've got the Royal Rumble coming up in a couple weeks, 3 weeks, I think, but it is definitely something to keep in mind. Now, I did say that the TNA deal was not the only thing we were going to talk about today, and the other big piece we're going to talk about is Corey Graves. Now, if somehow you haven't heard, and it is possible because some tweets were deleted, Corey Graves, the short version is Corey Graves seemed legitimately unhappy to be demoted to NXT when Pat McAfee came back and the Netflix move happened and all that stuff basically became official. And Corey Graves was effectively demoted to NXT when he had been on SmackDown and Raw. And basically, he's proven he's good enough to be in those seats. Obviously, that is a subjective statement. There are some people who really don't like him. There are some people who really don't like Pat McAfee. I like them both for different reasons. And I can see if you can find this tweet in question. Effectively, Corey Graves talks about how his career as a wrestler was taken from him. He found a new passion in the announcing side of things. He was really good at it. And then he was basically told that he wasn't famous enough to hold his spot that he had earned, and was put onto NXT. The timeline there kind of suggests, and then, well, before I get to the timeline, he then sent a tweet out saying that he had a lot of stuff to get off his chest and he'd see everybody at NXT this last week, the one that just happened. Now, after that, both tweets were deleted, and specifically the tweet involving a lot of things to ARC on NXT was deleted. And then Corey Graves was seen in an airport in Orlando. And a lot of, I think it was Sean Ross Sapp had reported it, that there were only 2 chairs for the NXT rehearsals at the announce booth, indicating that Corey Graves was in fact not there, which makes sense if he was seen flying out. The reason that we're talking about this is that there is now talk that, although not a work to begin with, there is some signs that potentially maybe they've worked something out, and Corey Graves's that tweet effectively might be kind of transitioned from shoot to work, where Corey Graves will be back on TV and maybe more of a antagonistic role than in the past. There is rumor earlier this year or late last year, within recent last couple years, Corey Graves did allegedly get cleared to compete again. He might have ruled that out, but maybe one more bump, maybe a Pat McAfee versus Corey Graves match is on the cards. I'm not going to speculate tremendously on it. I've kind of done so already, but for the sake of entertainment, I want everybody to be happy. So hopefully any issues backstage were worked out, everybody can be professional, and we can move on. But yeah, that's kind of the big points we want to talk about today. I will see all of you guys in the next video. Bye!